Andrew Flachner, welcome to the Forward One podcast.
Thanks, good to be here.
Excited to have you here, my man.
Appreciate it.
We've known each other for a long time, not super frequent in interaction, but I know you started as an agent, Keller Williams with Al D'Amico.
That's right.
Is that like 15 years ago?
Longer. It was actually when I was still in high school, so 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, not far from here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I loved real estate. I had a passion for it, was curious. I remember I tried applying for a normal job at Kinko's and got declined. And then I thought, hey, why don't I try selling real estate? And so I don't know why anyone trusted a pimple-faced teenager to help them buy or sell a home, but with enough ambition and the right mentorship, I was off to the races.
But you sold a few.
I sold a few. I remember the first one I sold was one of the least expensive homes, but it was in Palos Verdes, so not too bad.
Everything's relative.
And I remember looking at the first check and thinking, wow, there's a lot of money to be made here if you really commit yourself.
Yep. And it's funny, I met you for the first time not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and I feel like I've known you from a distance through association as the owner, founder of RealScout, which I certainly know of. Amazing what you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Yep.
In a very crowded space, the number of people, depending on where the market is, the number of people that are, I have a new idea or I have a new app, and young, ambitious, and for me, I almost have to filter it out because there are so many great people with great ideas. Like,
we become desensitized.
What's gonna actually make it through the filtering and that sort of thing. And I will say this, when you talk to a founder, it always sounds good, mostly, right? If you talk to a good founder, it always sounds good, whether it is or not. Here's one of the things where you can really tell, and that is, how many users do you have? How many subscribers do you have? Because you could actually even have something great, and if you've got like 12 subscribers, you have a problem. There's a problem somewhere. And then, and I am curious. So I know the number, but I want you to tell us anyway. So how many subscribers?
We have about 100,000 paying subscribers.
Right, and that's proof of concept, right?
Yeah,
and then some, right?
And so, yeah, I mean, you have to have product market fit, and also you can't have a leaky bucket. And churn is a big problem in software companies, but especially in real estate, because people are turning out of the industry at an alarming rate, especially in a tough market like we're experiencing today.
Also, in real estate tech, another churn could be somebody getting out of the business. Okay, fine. The other churn that I've noticed is that realtors are generally not super tech savvy. And so if you have a really good pitch, they're like, wow, they always want more business. So you have a really good pitch. If the pitch is amazing, they sign up. And then something happens after the sign up, whether there's a technology fail or whether there's a fail to implement or whatever it is. And then after a while, they go, okay, well, we're paying this guy, not Andrew, we're paying this guy or gal, $50 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever it is, and our ROI is zero. And so eventually they look up and cancel.
Yep.
And then you have your great sales team selling it to more people. Well, with a million one or whatever it happens to be, realtors, you can have 30,000 subscribers and just, the churn rate, right? So how?
And before you answer that, one thing we always talk about is functionality, and then arguably even more important, how user-friendly is it, right? So when you can combine them both at a very high level, you're hitting a gigantic home run, and there's very few companies in that space that do both well. So coming back to Paul's point, give us a little sense of the trajectory, what the retention rate is, and how RealScout plays in both those different areas, functionality and user friendliness.
Yeah, I think we can distill that down to failure to launch, right? Because if something's too overwhelming, too complicated, you're not going to get the adoption. And let's face it, real estate agents have a lot of different vendors pitching them different things. I think there is a bit of a shiny red object syndrome in real estate, partly because real estate agents wear so many hats, right? They may be at a conference and hear about a vendor and sign up, and then guess what happens an hour later? They get a showing request, or they need to go handle an escrow that's turning sideways. And so it comes through in different parts of our company. Like, I know that a big part of my focus as a CEO is to make sure that we have a product that is easy to use, but it's also in many ways automated. And if I could riff on this a little bit, I'll say that I was just driving down Sunset Boulevard here and I saw that, all the Netflix billboards, and it reminded me of Netflix having a really big challenge from 2018 to 2022. And the problem they had is they didn't really own their audience, and so other people did. They had increased competition with Hulu and Disney. They had a scarcity of content, right? Because there was just, a lot of publishers and not a lot of content creators. Then they had rising cost of marketing, customer acquisition costs, and they had a churn problem. Okay. Now, just to put the churn problem in perspective, in one quarter, they lost over 1 million subscribers. Wow. Okay. That was a peak in their 25-year operating history at the time.
I wonder what relative churn that is. So how many total subscribers?
I don't have it offhand.
Yeah. But if you have 10 million subscribers, 1 million is 10%. If you have 20 million, it's going to make a difference.
Well, even the customer acquisition costs went through the roof because they were actually in 2018, they were spending over $200 to acquire one user. And at the time, that one user was $13 a month in a subscription. And so the reason I bring this up in this conversation is because those 4 challenges were a perfect storm for Netflix. Now, they treated it as a perfect opportunity, but real estate agents have the same 4 challenges, right? They have increased competition. They have a content scarcity, and what's content in our business? It's homes to sell,
sure.
Yep.
Right? So there's an inventory crisis.
Yep.
Customer acquisition costs have gone up. And has the cost of leads gone up or down over time?
Up.
They've gone
Sure.
up.
Yep.
Right? And then when it comes to churn, I have a clever or kind of witty way to talk about a churn problem, but we call it a database instead of a database, because a lot of agents, a lot of teams, a lot of brokerages have thousands or tens of thousands of contacts, but they haven't really activated or retained or engaged those contacts. So I think there is a way to look at this in terms of a crisis and a perfect storm. It's really a perfect opportunity for the agents who are going to treat this the right way.
Yeah.
Another way to look at churn is the NAR study that I quote all the time and butcher every time, so we could put it in the show notes, but I'll get it within reasonable margin of error, and that is they do a survey after a home sale, and they'll ask several questions, but bottom line question is, would you use this realtor again? And the answer is like 90% of the time they say yes. There's like 88% of the time they say yes. And then when they track that customer, only like 12% of the time or 15% of the time they use the same realtor. So that's another way of showing that churn. So client acquisition means you have the client. So you did the sale.
Yeah.
Now you lose the client.
You
and which is churn,
money.
because you're not, to your point, engaging, you're not following up, you're not following through, you're not staying, in communication with those people that you've spent a lot of money and time and effort to acquire.
That's right. That's right. And I actually have a study that would be relevant for this conversation. My friend Tom Ferry worked with a company called Revaluate to do a study on 8 different real estate businesses. They had about 500,000 contacts in total. And they were able to look at those databases and see what percentage of those contacts ended up selling a home with a different real estate agent. The number was 93%.
Wow.
93%. So if you think about the amount of leakage that you have in your database, and you're right, Josh. I mean, you already spent the money to acquire them. You already spent the effort in driving them around on the weekends or selling their home or, helping repaint the front door, and you earned their trust. And then because you are focused on the dopamine hit of a new lead, you've kind of left behind your most valuable asset. And if you have the right approach to managing a database, that asset can pay dividends. Pay once and then get repaid over and over and over again.
We have a coaching session that we do twice a week, and we were talking about the Covey quadrant, and the things that are important and urgent. And important and urgent in this instance would be a client that you have right now that's looking for a house. That's important and it's urgent. And then you have all the other things that are urgent but not important that are distracting you. And then you have the things that are important but not urgent. And staying in touch with your with all of your former clients. We all know you're not going to get an argument from realtors that, oh yes, that's important, but it's not urgent because I just sold them the house a year ago. They're not looking, so it's not an urgent matter.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I ran into an agent recently who told me that she had 100 different things that she's focusing on. That's not what focus means, right?
Agreed.
And I think there's probably some KW people who are listening to this podcast, and I'm sure many of them have read The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's
Yep.
one of my favorite books. It's definitely guided the way I think about planning and goal setting in my personal life and my professional life. But what is the one thing that you could focus on such that everything else would become easier or unnecessary? That should be your North Star. And you have to be really honest and disciplined when you answer that question, because there are a lot of things that you could justify are important, but do they really move your business or your life forward?
Yep. We literally talked about just that
For sure.
this morning. So for you, what is that one thing? What was that one thing? Does it continue to be that one thing? How has that evolved? Tell us what in that context.
What's your one thing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what governs the one thing is probably my purpose. And my purpose is to organize and inspire a diverse and creative group of people to build. That's really my purpose. Now, for me, in this chapter of my life, it's building RealScout. It's also building a family. I think in a more practical, tangible way, I want to build real estate someday and be a real estate developer or flip homes. So that's what inspires me, like bringing these people together. And I'm not a specialist when it comes to construction management or city and regional planning, but I like the idea of being the conductor of the symphony and bringing those specialties together. The same thing goes as CEO of a tech company. I'm not a technical co-founder, but my co-founder is. And we have designers and engineers and product managers and product marketing folks, and we bring those people together, and that is really exciting to inspire and motivate these people to build.
So to use the one thing analogy, they use a domino, right? So what's your current domino?
Are you talking about like the 411 or?
No. The idea being that so you have this vision, which I love, the purpose to organize and inspire. I love that, and that's a really broad category. Sure. That can give you the realtor problem of 100 things to focus on. And then at this moment in time, there is that one domino. That's the next domino.
What's the action, for lack of a better?
Yeah.
I think that helps. Like, what's the one action that your one thing right now in your business?
Sure. We haven't disclosed this publicly, but I'm happy to. So we have two goals that are really driving a lot of our activity at RealScout. And the first is a revenue goal, and the second is a retention goal, right? And those are the guiding principles, because if we are doing a good job in delivering on the promise of the product, then we will hit the revenue goal and we will hit the retention goal. And in some ways, those are two sides of the same coin, right? Because it's going to be hard to hit the revenue goal if we're not retaining.
Okay, so to do an on-the-fly analysis with that, your revenue goal and your retention goal are going to be the KPIs, in essence, that the key performance indicators that you're measuring. And and then you said promise of product. So right at this moment, what is the one thing to get promise of product?
Yeah, it's really straightforward for us. We want to take your database and turn it into your biggest asset. We want to take your database and we want to turn it into a gold mine. We want to take your database and turn it into a revenue engine. That's all we want to do. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they get caught up in other opportunities that are that we consider to be distractions, right? For instance, could RealScout also build a CRM? Can we build a CMA? Could we start doing lead gen? Yes. In fact, I think we could probably double or triple our revenue if we lit up these other businesses, but we wouldn't be doing a great job at it.
What's the point of friction right now?
Keeping up with demand, which is something I haven't been able to say for the 13-year operating history of the company, but we know the demand is out there. I'll give you an example. We exhibited at a conference, and we spent $20,000 to exhibit at this conference to get the booth and fly the team out there. We booked over $250,000 of revenue from that conference. And we had a swarm of people around the booth. We had one of our salespeople on a microphone. It was just complete chaos, and it was very exciting. But that results in a lot of people to onboard and onboard successfully. So you have to kind of ratchet up the resources of the company along with the demand for the product. And you don't want to get carried away with that, right? Because earlier in my career, we did get ahead of our skis, right? We saw that growth and we said, okay, great, let's go raise millions of dollars and let's go hire all these people just to have, too many people. And that results in having to make some tough decisions around cost control. And I think the same is true with real estate, right? A lot of brokerage executives out there in a great market will go ahead and get more office space and bring on more staff, and then they are stuck with a pretty difficult decision when things change. So my advice to anyone listening is hire when it hurts, right? Feel that pain before you go out and try to get ahead of it.
I like so hire when it hurts. That's good. That'll resonate and stick with me. So you talked about the two lagging indicators, which is revenue and retention, and which again are the lagging indicators of the KPIs. What is that leading indicator for you? And contrast that perhaps with your partner who's more on the tech side, right? As I understand it, what does that mean for Andrew on the leading indicator piece?
Yeah, I mean, there are metrics that are higher up in the funnel, right? Like how many people are going to realscout.com and visiting our pricing page, how many people are showing up at the booth requesting demos. Those are things that we absolutely track. And I think for real estate practitioners out there are also these early indicator metrics, as I'd call them, early indicator metrics. And it's very easy, of course, to just see GCI and how much revenue is hitting the books. But if you can go earlier in the funnel and see how many people are responding to your emails, how many are requesting showings, that will help you forecast demand a little bit better and see. Here's the big problem that a lot of real estate marketers will have, right? A lot of real estate marketers will have a problem where they will make a bet or an investment or run an experiment in their business. And then to gauge whether or not those things are working, they need to wait for transactions to close.
Right.
That could happen 12 or 18 months later, right? That's a really long cycle for experimentation. So the advice that I would have is figure out what your early indicating metrics are. And those are the KPI that, you can measure up funnel, and then you can reallocate budget from your worst performing experiments to your best performing experiments.
And I wonder if you're comfortable, what's your retention rate, and what would be a great retention rate?
Yeah, it's another thing we haven't shared before, but it's in the upper 90s in terms of percentiles.
So annual. So if it's upper 90s, let's just say, and I won't hold you to it, but just for clarification of that statement, if you're at 90% retention or 95 retention, then the 5 would be churn. So if you have 100,000 customers, you lose 5,000 a year. That would be your version of 5%.
Maybe.
Churn?
I think if you ask a CFO or you ask a product leader, there are 10 different ways to measure churn.
Yeah,
For a software company like ours, we are most interested in net revenue retention.
I see.
Net revenue retention, if we had 100% net revenue retention, that doesn't mean that we have 0% churn. It just means that we churn 5% of the revenue, but we also increase account value or upsells with, for 5% of the revenue.
So if you have 100,000 subscribers paying $100 a month, and then a certain percentage elect for the $150 per month, you could have revenue increase while losing some customers.
Yeah. And I think that a software company in residential real estate with net revenue retention in the 90s is exceptional and pretty rare. I would say that for a traditional software company, it's good. Maybe it's great, but it's probably good. So again, one of the challenges that we have, like many of our peers in the space, is that our customer base churns as well.
Yeah.
So
I'm shocked to hear that. I would guess that like 90%, because you said high 90s, but I would guess that 90% revenue retention, especially for real estate tools, would be very, very high. And then even in software in general, I just think that people are churning.
It depends on the category,
yeah.
right? I mean, if you're an enterprise software like Salesforce, for instance,
Yeah.
people don't churn off of Salesforce.
No,
right?
that's right. There's
Once
too
you-
much sunken cost.
That's
Yeah.
right, and it kind of reaches its tentacles into every part of your business. So
Yeah.
yeah, an SMB and CRMs in real estate and website services. I mean, the churn is pretty brutal,
Right.
right? And that's because
So
people,
at high 90s, just to clarify, you're making up for the people you're losing almost exactly with the increase in revenue of the people that are staying.
But he's also gaining people too.
Right.
So like when you, it's
well,
a, it's
no,
a
for,
that's not
but-
baked in there.
No,
No,
for
that-
retention, you wouldn't consider.
that's
you look
exactly
at, you
my
just
point.
look at one cohort,
that's
right?
right.
You look at
Yeah.
a cohort from last year and then see what is the revenue of that cohort.
Yeah.
this
Right, that's
year.
what I thought. So for the people you're losing, you're almost making it all back with the people you're keeping that are spending more money with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the big unlocks in our business is that we are creating value based on how big your database is. So it used to be that this is years and many years ago,
Yeah.
and some of people are
That's-
grandfathered in, but it may be that, you sign up for RealScout 10 years ago, you just pay $39 a month, doesn't matter how big your database
Yeah.
is. But now, if you have a database of 100 people versus 100,000, you're going to pay more for that larger database.
Yeah.
So what happens is, and this perfectly aligns our
That's
incentives.
just to say, it just creates alignment.
it splits the demand curve perfectly.
It does, but I will say that now our entire team is rallying around this idea that if we deliver for your 100 contacts and we prove to you that we can nurture them, we can engage them, we can convert them, we can generate revenue from them, then you're going to come back next month and what are you going to say? You're going to say, well, I don't just have 100 contacts. I told you I did,
Yeah.
but I actually have 1,000 contacts
Right.
and I want to upload all of them because I know that I got positive ROI on the investment.
Exactly. If you're getting a great ROI on $100, then why would you not want to double down, triple down, quadruple down on that with that same multiple ROI? Yep.
Exactly.
And I don't know if this is, I just had a thought about, because I was thinking about sunken cost with respect to Salesforce, and it's so expensive to get integrated, and then each integration costs so much money that in order to think about leaving there, you have to think about like the 100 G's that you put into their system.
Right.
And how could that possibly translate out into other models that don't necessarily have that particular benefit, let's say. And I'm always using AI for stuff. And one feature that I realized after the fact, because I would subscribe to, it's $20 a month. So it's like, I'll subscribe to 3 or 4 different AI models, whatever is working or whatever I'm more comfortable with. And eventually I'll cancel a couple. Ever since ChatGPT started using their memory feature. So they
Right.
unlocked a memory feature, which now I'm using. Forget about when they unlocked it, but it wasn't that long ago. But now I'm using it. I'm now having it keep lists for me. And it can do like massive things on a list, like an ingredient list. Sorry, I use my shake. I've got, here are the 10 ingredients. Here's how much I use. But I give the product name, so it's going and looking up and exactly how much of each micro and macronutrient there is per thing. And now it's replacing part of the memory of my brain.
Right.
And if you could figure out how to do that, maybe downloading people's databases is certainly one thing, but if they change their mind, they go away. But how can you become a tool that they somehow get sunken cost into?
Yeah, I mean, we don't think a lot about that because it should be a meritocracy. You should be using RealScout because it does the best job at nurturing and converting your leads.
I always say, like, even in the brokerage world, I want people here because they want to be here, not because they feel
sure.
like forced to have to be here, like locked in, which is, there are certain models that intentionally do that. And to your point, and it also, quite frankly, in the customer acquisition, it probably creates, i.e. Salesforce, a lot more barriers.
Oh, for sure.
Because they recognize that in advance that, hey, this is expensive, I'm going to get locked in. And there's trade-offs, right? Depends on your business model, depends on your product and your value proposition, right?
Yeah, and to your point, Paul, it doesn't have to be nefarious. And your example is not a nefarious example.
No.
They're providing value to you, but it is getting to learn you. And so if you were to spend $20 with somebody else, then you have to teach that company everything there is to know about you. So I get that. But yeah, ultimately we just want to build the best product we can, and we know that that's going to result in the best retention.
The other thing that people look at is the moat around your product. So now you've introduced something that's great to the marketplace. What stops everybody else from jumping on board?
Yeah, it's a good question. And if you look at the top 20 largest and most successful companies in the country, you'll find that 17 out of 20 of them benefit from something called a network effect. And a network effect is really simple. It just says that as more and more people join a product or an organization, that product or organization becomes more valuable. So a classic example would be Craigslist, right? Where Craigslist is not the greatest software out there, but it is where you would probably go for certain things like, I don't know, rentals. And the reason why is that because every listing on there makes it more valuable for the consumer, and every consumer makes it more valuable for the listings. There's some of that taking shape with RealScout, and let me explain how. RealScout has become an industry standard for residential brokers, agents, and teams. And so in any market, like we're here in West Hollywood, many of the biggest brokerages are using the platform, which means their agents are using the platform, which also means that their clients are using the platform, searching for homes. And what we can then do is we can start to reveal insights about real-time buyer demand. Now, this is really interesting because most agents, if you were to ask them today, how many listings are on the market, they can tell you within seconds. They log into the MLS, they can tell you.
Sure.
But if you were to ask them the other side of the market, buyer demand, and say how many buyers are looking for a 3-2 in West Hollywood under $3 million, they would have no clue. So because we've established this market share, because we've done such a great job getting market share in these regions, we can start to reveal insights about what buyers are looking for, what price point they're looking at. There's some really interesting things we can do with that data, but it makes it really hard for another company to come into the space tomorrow and be able to reveal that same level of data. Keep in mind, this is the only industry where the knowledge brokers are actually blind to half of the market, meaning the demand side of the market, right? It's pretty wild that if I'm gonna sell my home in Westwood, most agents wouldn't be able to tell me, would I be able to generate more buyer demand if I lowered the list price by 3% versus 5%? It's flying blind, right? And other brokered marketplaces, like the stock market, you have a bid and you have an ask, and you can actually see both sides of the market, but in real estate, you can't. So long way of saying that.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting
for
perspective.
Sure.
I mean, spot on. I mean,
and I think we obviously been in the business long enough that we have some idea of that, but then you really crystallized it because the sell side of it is so obvious, and then the buy side really is a blind side.
Right.
And so what do you do at RealScout to help create clarity on that blind side?
Yeah, I mean, people use our test the market feature when they walk into a listing appointment and say, hey, Josh, I know you think your home is worth $3 million because your neighbor's house sold their home for $3 million 6 months ago. But guess what? The market's different than it was 6 months ago. And while you think your home is worth $3 million, if we lower the list price to $2.9 million, we'd capture 7% more of the buyers. So it's just more data that you can bring in to demonstrate your level of sophistication.
Yep.
I mean, any of your clients can go to Zillow or Redfin and just see what the comps are in the neighborhood. But if you could bring real-time buyer demand data, that differentiates you in a really big way.
And the only way, that is the network effect, because the only way you can really get, it's N of what,
Right.
So if you're in West Hollywood, I'd say, well, how many
data points?
how many data points do you have with
Yeah.
respect to buyers? Because the MLS really has, 95 or more percent, because some people are like, it's off market or whatever, but mainly it's listed if it's for sale.
It's a little nuanced because yes, the sample size matters, but it's also the depth and the quality of that sample. And so for us, we look at intent, right? Because there's a lot of people searching on Zillow, for instance, but many of them are window shoppers, right? There's, 300 million people searching on Zillow every single month. And how many home sales are there every year? Right now there's 4 million. Okay, so what that means that there are a lot of people who are tire kickers, who are looky-loos. And so if you are going to reveal data about buyer demand, you would want to make sure that those buyers are bona fide buyers. And we could take it a step further. So we can reveal the data, the anonymized aggregated data that will help you with marketing and pricing the home. But we could take it a step further and actually reveal the identity of other agents in our network who have matching buyers for your listing. So think about that. If you sign a listing agreement with me today, I know that there are 30 agents in West Hollywood. Some of them are KW, sure, but others are at Sotheby's and Coldwell Banker and Century 21 or whoever it may be. And I can reach out to these agents, reverse prospect, and bring them and their buyers to the table. So it really demonstrates that you're going to go a step further in serving your clients as opposed to, putting it on the market and hoping for the best.
That's really answering one of the questions. As you look at RealScout, people really view it as a tremendous buyer tool, and you're talking about how it can really affect the seller side.
Yeah. A few years ago, we decided that we were not going to just focus on one side of the market because buyers will become sellers and sellers will become buyers. So it's really important that you have a full client lifecycle solution. So we can help nurture buyers, but we can help nurture sellers as well.
Yeah. So when we met before, you informed us a little bit, which was interesting to me. We asked you, what does RealScout look like relative to some of the other CRMs? And your answer is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're not a CRM. We work alongside a CRM. So, and again, I'll let you speak for yourself because you can do it a lot more articulately than I can. So explain that dimension of RealScout, because it definitely resonated to me.
Yeah, some people use RealScout as a CRM, but we would absolutely never call ourselves a CRM. And the reason for that is it's a loaded term. CRMs often do 100 different things, and we don't. We do 5 or 10 different things. We just happen to do them really well. So a CRM will be your single source of truth, your repository of all of your contacts. And sometimes that CRM will even allow you to do automated email marketing, right? So if you want to send, email drip campaigns, you can do that. But for anything that your clients would typically get through a national portal, maybe they want to see what their home is worth. Maybe they want to see market activity. Maybe they want to see listings. They are probably not using your CRM or your IDX website to do that.
Correct.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
Let's just have an honest conversation because everyone says, oh, well, I have an IDX website that my clients can search on. They're not searching there. They just aren't.
Yep.
And RealScout is that solution. So we've put tens of millions of dollars into capital, thousands of engineering hours, just making sure that we have a product that is as good as the portals for consumers, but as good as the MLS for agents. And when you combine those two things, then you and your clients are they're not driven apart. There's no wedge being driven in between you and your clients. If you're using the MLS and your clients are using other websites, then you lack visibility into their behavior.
Yeah.
And if that's happening on the same system and you have visibility into it, then it puts you at an advantage.
That's interesting. So your expectation is that a RealScout subscriber, and that would be the agent.
It could be an agent, team, or brokerage. But it's the agent who's logging in using it.
So that all of my clients will be using RealScout to do their searches
as their primary search vehicle, right? If somebody's excited about a home, you better believe they're going to Google it. They're going to be on Redfin. They're going to get Photo.
Yeah, but that's a big statement.
That's a big statement.
Yeah, and listen, I'll take credit for some of that, but I think a lot of the credit belongs to our customers because consumers want to search alongside their agent. Think about this.
Yeah.
The reason why your clients are not searching on your website or your MLS is because it is letting them down so badly that they would be willing to jump through hoops and search on another site like Zillow or Redfin, screenshot it, text it to you, wait for you to go back to the office and log into the MLS. That is a bad experience, and they're willing to do all of that because you're letting them down so badly.
And because
it just lacks credibility. It's just a different way of saying the same thing, right? Because they don't have the confidence and the credibility that they're going to see everything that they want to see on your website.
Well, and if you want some inside baseball on this, we interviewed home buyers for over 100 hours. In-person interviews. And we wanted to get to the bottom of this question, which is, why are you not searching on the brokerage website or the team's website or the agent's website? Yes, the experience usually leaves something to be desired, but that actually wasn't the biggest reason. The biggest reason is that when they see the big KW logo or RE/MAX logo or EXP logo, they start to think that they're not seeing all of the listings.
It was the first thing I was going to ask Andrew. It was like, so if I use the RealScout tool, I'm going to see all of the listings.
Yes, you're going to see all the listings because we pull from the MLS, but the consumers are going to feel like they're seeing all the listings because it's not so heavily white labeled. It doesn't have KW red drenched all over the site.
They feel it's impartial.
I liken it to when you go to a restaurant's website and you hope to God they didn't build their own reservation system, right?
Yeah.
If you go to a restaurant's website, you hope that they use OpenTable. And you hope that because OpenTable has a neutral third party type of reputation.
And so the other thing I think you would, and when we had talked before, that they're going to see more, correct me if I'm wrong, than just what's on the MLS. There was another dimension to that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth or fumble it, because I probably will. But do you know what I'm speaking of when I'm?
Yeah, it really depends on the brokerage, right? So we do offer support for office exclusive listings, and we do it in a way that's compliant with Zillow and Redfin's new policies. But it varies by MLS and it varies by market. But typically the platform is designed so that agents can share their office exclusives with other agents in the brokerage. And then those agents can share them with their clients.
I guess maybe, one of the things we didn't do really from the top is tell us
the evolution of agent.
I was going to say, tell us give us the pitch. Tell us what RealScout does. What it does, what it doesn't do. Why should we be a customer of RealScout?
Sure. I mean, it's really straightforward. Every agent, every team, every brokerage has a database of stale leads, and it's your biggest asset. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but these consumers that are in your database, they have questions about what their home is worth. They have questions about what's hitting the market, what their neighbor's house just sold for. And because they are answering those questions through national portals, they are not going to you to answer those questions. And so if you can stay top of mind, you can own your audience. If you don't own your audience, somebody else will. That's the bottom line. And so if you can activate your database and give them what they're looking for, give them what they want, which is actionable, reliable real estate data, then you are going to be top of mind when they think about buying or selling.
I have two potential clients. That's probably not great for a realtor on a podcast when people come to you. They've got a lot more. But I have two friends, because I'm generally not active in the day-to-day business.
Yep.
Okay, but I have two friends, and let's just say they're heavy hitters. Okay. And I'll give you the two scenarios. One is in a very expensive lease that I help them get into, and they'll buy whenever they feel like it. And I don't have the pulse like I know what RealScout function is. I don't have the pulse to figure out what's he looking at? What's his interest changed a little bit? At first he wanted to be in a certain area, now he's decided to be in a different area. I didn't learn that until he calls me and says, hey, I want to be in Venice. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have thought that. The other client, again, sort of a friend, is, they're in an expensive house and they're going to move to a more expensive house, and they'll do it when they find the new house because they don't need to sell the first one. And I'm not really sure. So now I'm just going to what am I going to do? Send them stuff, and my guy that's in the lease, he could buy tomorrow, or he could buy 6 months from now or 10 months from now. And I think something like RealScout could help me with those two scenarios. But I want to know, you're going to give it to me, what am I going to do with it?
Right.
And what's my client experience going to be?
A lot of people in your position, they will do their best to stay top of mind with their clients by sending some generic newsletter or updates on the market. I'm not saying those things aren't valuable. I mean, certainly you shouldn't be sending gardening tips and daylight savings reminders. But if you are sending, some type of content, it might as well be the type of content that these consumers care about. And if somebody is in a lease, perhaps looking to move, maybe the lease is short term, maybe they're looking to buy or move into another lease, you want to keep tabs on their process, right? If they start to search for listings in an area, then you want to be made notified about that. There's different levels of intent, right? There's shallow intent, where maybe they're just kind of poking around, looking around, but then there's high intent. So if this client were to look at the same property 3 times in a row, wouldn't you want to know about that?
Absolutely.
And then we would tell you. We would tell you that. If there's a homeowner that wants to know what their home is worth, and they go to Zillow or Redfin, Zillow and Redfin are not going to tell you that happened, but RealScout will. So you can essentially get a live activity feed of everything that's happening in your database. Oh, my client Josh looked at a property 3 times in a row. Oh, this other person wanted an update on their home's value. That's the type of signal. And we try to do a good job at separating the signal from the noise.
And so that makes the presumption, I guess, that they would
have to use it
to RealScout. So tell us how that works and what the challenges and opportunities are on that front.
Sure. So we are at the middle of the funnel, right? So we exist for you to introduce this product to people who already know you and like you and trust you, right? Maybe somebody who you're already working with, or a lead that you recently purchased, but you established some type of relationship. That is really that's the key to this whole operation,
right?
Because it's like if a dentist recommends a certain brand of toothpaste, you're probably going to try it. And if it doesn't let you down, you'll probably continue to use it. The problem is that you might be letting them down with your current MLS alerts or with your, website.
So
website.
That's the presumption that they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt like they do with many other things. And now you've got to make sure you deliver and that you create real value for them.
There is a precipitous drop-off in the experience that a consumer experiences on Zillow, and then when they are introduced to whatever tech you provide. Hopefully that's not true of everyone listening to this, but if we have an honest look in the mirror, most agents are still setting their clients up in the MLS, which is so powerful as an agent tool, but leaves a lot to be desired for consumers, right? There's no consumer that gets a property alert from the MLS and is riveted and thinks, wow, this is so much better than what I've been using.
You can do that with Zillow, right? Because Zillow will send alerts for similar houses. How do you differentiate from that?
Your clients want to be connected to you. When they have a question about real estate, they don't want to take a screenshot. They don't want to send you a link. It'd be nice if they're just using the app and they can say, hey, I want to schedule this showing with Paul, and I want to see a property this afternoon. That's the biggest differentiator, right? This is a tool that agents and their clients can use together.
And there are some companies, that are doing that pretty successfully internally. Right?
There are maybe one.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be one, and they might have gotten some cues from RealScout.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of a knockoff, RealScout knockoff.
Yeah.
And we do hear those agents, saying
Speak highly.
great things, saying great things about it.
Yep.
So now I, in essence, I'm not sending this client. So it's like a real case scenario. Like I say, maybe a small data set, but it's an important client. He's super busy. I feel like I only have a certain number of times I can reach out to him. So I don't even want to send him stuff because I can't cloud his inbox. But if I sent him a link to RealScout, said, hey, download this. It's an excellent portal. I think you'll like it better than Zillow, and it allows me to work closer with you. Is that what I would say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And listen, we are not building a product to replace the need for human interaction, right? I mean, if you have to, exactly. But if you have these high-end clients, then I would recommend doing what I call a portfolio review, right? In financial services, you don't just talk to your financial advisor when you need something. Ideally, they would check in with you every year, do a portfolio review. Here are your investments. Here's what's happening in the economy. Here's what I recommend. You could be doing that for your real estate portfolio, which is to say, I meet with my clients on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, and I say, hey, Josh, you have this investment property. You have this high-end lease in Beverly Hills. Like, what's your plan? Let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're thinking about buying somewhere on the west side. Well, I'm going to set you up on a search, and it's going to look and feel like what you're used to on a national portal. The difference is that this data is coming directly from me, and if you have any questions or you want to request a showing, you can just tap the showing request button and it'll come directly to me.
One of the ways I would pitch the product is I would say to an agent, okay, so tell the truth. Your client they're looking at Zillow first, right? And then they're coming to you. Okay, great. So what if you could have a view into exactly what they were searching and clicking, and then you could have sort of a two-way conversation with them based on what they were doing? Wouldn't that be interesting for you? And I assure you that you use this product, they'll enjoy it as much or more than they do this Zillow search, especially because they're going to be getting some real feedback from you. And then when they're really looking at stuff, then you can reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you've stopped looking in Silver Lake and now you're looking in Venice. Does that mean you want to move to Venice?
Yeah, I think that's a good pitch, and I think that's how you would interact with a buyer who you're inviting to RealScout. And then again, on the sell side, we do have home value estimates, we have market activity, we have buyer demand. We talked about the buyer demand earlier, but it's really cool to see it on a heat map where you can see where is the buyer demand concentrated. right? Because you can check in with that over time and just see, okay, after COVID, how have these heat maps changed?
Taking a step back, bigger picture, you're at 100,000 paid subscribers now. What's the goal for the next 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, so there's a lot that we want to do with AI. I don't have anything to announce today, but we have some pretty creative ways to improve the product, make it more intuitive, make it easier, make it more effective by using AI. We also want to help you repair your database, right? We get a lot of customers who come in and they have a database that's missing addresses or missing key information. We want to help you prioritize your database by adding clues about who is most likely to engage or convert. So the nurture piece of it is really the hardest, and that's what we've spent over a decade building out. But the next step in this process is to help you identify and prioritize the people who demand your attention most, right? Because it becomes a signal to noise issue, right? We had a top agent in Orange County in California who set up these home value alerts, and in not very long, he had 700 people in his database engage with him through RealScout. 700 people. He didn't have a massive database. He had maybe a few thousand, 3,500. But that was overwhelming. He had to hire staff. He had to really, figure out how to manage all this interest. So what we want to do is we want to help you prioritize it, segment it, integrate it really nicely with your CRM. So we have incredible CRM integrations where, okay, if these 3 things happen on RealScout, then we want it to add it into a smart list, or we want to add it to an action plan. These are things you can do with our CRM integration partners.
Yeah, presented, I mean, you communicate very, very well, and it's compelling for sure.
13 years of practice. Right. I will say that to any, aspiring entrepreneur out there, it is a really, really tough thing to build a startup because you don't necessarily know that there is a problem to the solution that you're building. And it wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I feel like we had so much product market fit that it was unmistakable. A friend of mine, the CEO and founder of Redfin, I was texting him a few years ago and I said, hey Glenn, I think we have so much product market fit now that I wonder if we ever had it. And he said, if you were wondering, you didn't have it. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. When you have product market fit, it is an unmistakable feeling. It's this pull into the market that I hope everyone can experience because otherwise it's a little like chewing glass. I mean, it's tough to build something from nothing and really iterate your way into that, fits like a glove moment. Are there any particular mentors that you can identify that you can share with us in terms of, because look, you're very well educated, well versed, you're thoughtful, I'm impressed, and I'm curious to know like who is informed. I'm sure there's been many people. Are there any couple that you would identify that have really like helped inform your path and your trajectory? There are too many to count is the short answer. And I find that, let me take this a different direction. When we founded the company, we turned not to our advisors, but to our potential customers. And they have been the best teachers for us. In startup land, in Silicon Valley, they call it customer development, which is to say you develop your product around the customer need. And we would show up to conversations. I would approach strangers at airports and be like, oh, what's your name? Josh? Oh, have you ever bought or sold a home? Like, what was the most painful part of that experience? And that is what informed our entire product. To give you a more direct answer, I've been really fortunate over the years to build a personal board of advisors, if you will, people who I learn a lot from, but they all have specialty in different disciplines, right? So if I have a question about product, I have some of the best product people in my Rolodex. When it comes to real estate, I mean, if it's okay, I can tell you that, just to plug my own podcast, but I just started a podcast called the Playmakers Podcast.
You should plug it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the Playmakers Podcast by Andrew Flachner, and the people on that podcast I would consider to be mentors, right? I would consider to be advisors, and it may be very informal, right? It may be people that I speak with every 6 months or 12 months. I just recorded one yesterday with Gary Keller of Keller Williams. I recorded one with Gino Blafari, who was CEO of Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. We have some really exciting ones coming up. But these are people who I learn a tremendous amount from, and I think as an entrepreneur, you really need to approach things with a certain level of humility. You don't have the answers, and the people around you have already done this. Why reinvent the wheel?
One of the cool points of Andrew's podcast, if I'm getting it right, is that you can drop a question in for the CEOs, and then Andrew tries to get them to answer the question. So, if you get 20 questions, maybe you can fire some of them over to Gary Keller, and maybe he'll answer them. That would be cool. That's one
right.
of the features.
Yeah, if anyone follows me on social media, Andrew Flachner, A. Flachner, I usually post ahead of time, and I solicit questions from the audience. And sometimes I'll even, with your permission, relay their names on the air, right? So I'll say, hey, this next question comes from Josh.
I love it. It's a great idea.
And it ended up being this
I think
really...
you should spell Flachner.
Yeah, it's Flachner. And it'll be in the show notes. But follow me. I've done some really incredible interviews with Simon Sinek.
He's
Start with Why.
I'm a fan of his.
So like best-selling authors, real estate leaders, the COO of Zillow. Really interesting people who are the playmakers of our industry, that they can affect change in ways that very few people can. And so I realized a few months ago that I was having a lot of these conversations with these playmakers behind closed doors on private phone calls. Mm-hmm. And I realized that these leaders would be happy to have these conversations in more of a public domain. So these are hard-hitting interviews. They're not necessarily, they're fair questions, but they are also, they have some type of direct nature to them, right? Because there's a lot changing in the industry right now and people want answers.
Yeah. One of the things that, I won't mention who it is, but one of our mutual friends and thought leaders said to me and some other young folks who are technologists, because I said, hey, this guy knows a lot. What's your advice to these young technologists? And he said that technologists always underestimate how dumb realtors are. And I was like, that's the advice, like, especially coming from someone who's such a great thought leader. That's why I won't mention who it was. And I think that we've straddled, or maybe answered more directly what he was saying in so fewer words. And that is that if it's overly complicated, it doesn't mean they're dumb. It's how much of their brain cells are they going to use toward understanding your product? And the answer is very few. So that might make them dumb. However, you've got to make that tech product smart in the sense that it's easier to use. So
it just makes me think of customer development.
I think more than anything, he's talking about that actually the technologists are very well-meaning, and then they get educated, and they get educated in the real estate process, and then they try and solve problems in the sales process, which is great. However, they're not making their product accessible enough into a realtor's workflow or ease of use or whatever, so that it's like we talk about.
It's always a know your audience. Like, you got to put yourself in their shoes and try to make it as easy and seamless. And
you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we started with something that's so pedestrian. It's property alerts. There's nothing sexy about that. There's nothing sexy about that. But the reason we chose that is because, I could talk to a brokerage executive and they'll say, well, how am I going to get adoption of RealScout? Because we just launched our CRM and it has 20% adoption. And here's how the conversation goes. I say, okay, Paul, well, let me ask you a question. I want you to be honest with me. What percentage of your agents use a CRM?
Period.
At all? And the answer is usually around 30% or something.
Less than that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being generous. I'm being generous. Okay,
Yeah.
But let's just say it's 30%. I'm going to be generous here. So that means that even if you get 100% adoption of your new CRM, you're still at 30% adoption, right? And so what we decided to do instead is say, listen, what percentage of agents send listings to clients? 100?
There you go.
Maybe 100. And so that is a much more logical place to start. I was just having this conversation with one of the biggest brokerage CEOs in the country just a few days ago, and they are sweating what CRM to introduce to their company. And I just think it's the wrong wedge, right? You want to have the tip of the spear, and you want to meet people where they are.
We interview top realtors all the time. We try and show them our value proposition. I don't mean interview on the podcast because we are very brand agnostic. But part of what we do is lead generate for agents, like to be clear. And we meet with top agents, and the number of top agents, at least in our market, it might not be in Omaha where you have to sell, 200 or 300 houses to be the top agent. There are agents doing a huge business selling 20, 30 homes around here or 40 homes. And, the type of automation that you need to have in order to manage that. And, a very good friend of mine, we've interviewed him before, he's on a team and he's sold, he does a lot of the buy side. He sells 30 to 40 houses a year, which is a lot around here. And you do the math, if his average sell price is $2.5 million, the guy's got a huge book of business. And he does nothing with his database. And he's been doing it long enough now where he's had hundreds of prior sales.
Right. Well, you're asking about like what agents need, and I'm going to just provide a bookend on the whole Netflix thing because everyone loves a bookend.
Yeah.
How did Netflix handle this perfect storm? They got serious about personalization. Mm-hmm. They're arguably the best in the business.
Yep.
And they got serious about automation. Now that may seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. Right. And so I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you go to Netflix and you see your favorite show, there's usually a different thumbnail image every time you log on because they're testing multiple frames to see what's resonating, what's getting the best click-through rate, and then they are refining and they're doubling down on what works.
So they're using for lack of a better word, they're like a TikTok algorithm to see what you'll click on and serve you more of that.
That's right. They're split testing it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to just use the cover art provided by, the content creator or the studio, but they might choose a different frame that resonates more with a particular segment of their audience. So I don't want to fixate too much on that one example, but they got really serious about personalization. Most of their content is actually consumed from their algorithmic recommendation engine, and then they automated it all. So you can have a personalized, automated experience, and that's really the only way you can tackle a large database. Mm-hmm. So when you're asked what agents need, well, agents need more business, but they don't have a lot of money right now to buy new leads. So focus on the leads you already have, and that's going to allow you to own your audience before somebody else does.
And automate and personalize it, which is in essence what RealScout. And you're asking you're asking the questions to deter that gives you the data to inform the personalization.
It's like Pandora. I know that's an old example now, but Pandora, they don't ask you how many beats per minute you like, and if you like low bass rhythms or vocals. They just ask you to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So does Netflix, so does RealScout. And so we pick up on clues based on your behavior, and we serve you up inventory that's more likely to resonate. It's that simple.
Mm. That's great.
Simplicity is power, right? I mean,
I might be the one Netflix customer that doesn't use the algorithm at all. So we do a fire round. Generally, these are questions that could get long answers and rebuttals, but you're very straight to the point with good stuff. So, but we'll ask, we'll let you answer, and we'll move on.
Let's do it.
What's the attribute you most admire in others?
Candor.
What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Gosh, I have an answer you probably won't hear again, and it's actually not to optimize for happiness and really to optimize for experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion, right? I think to live a full life, you want to feel those peaks and valleys. Same reason why you'd watch a sad movie and you like crying your eyes out every now and then. But I think those contrasts really help build a fulfilling life.
What's the talent you'd most like to have?
Knowing something about sports.
What's your most treasured possession?
And this would be inanimate objects. I'm going to go with my home because of the experiences it unlocks with the people I care about.
What's the achievement you're most proud of?
I would say it would probably be building a beautiful family.
We have lots of great hikes around here, and if you find a great one, steep climb, traverse, get all the way up to the top of that hilltop, and you look down and your family, closest friends, clients, co-workers, your community is down below, and you shout one thing, what do you shout?
Hello. No, I mean, that's easy for me. I love you.
Very cool. Really enjoyed this. Extremely insightful and just unique perspective. And
I think we need to take a trial run in the RealScout sandbox so we can.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
I'm convinced.
Yep, absolutely.
It's really great, and definitely follow Andrew.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, follow me on social media, A Flachner, Andrew Flachner. Subscribe to the podcast, Playmakers Podcast with Andrew Flachner, and I would love to continue providing value for the network.
Yep,
love it.
Keep making it happen, brother.
All right, thanks again.
Yep.